Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. On this week's episode, we are going to be talking all about body image. It's something I'm seeing across the board. Most people are struggling on some level with how they look, whether it's something on their face, their body, their weight, something they don't like about themselves, not feeling good enough. It is infiltrating our lives in so many ways, and it blocks us from seeing the truth and embracing all of ourselves and loving all of our parts. And so in this episode, I invite back a previous guest, Victoria Albina, a holistic nurse practitioner, master certified life coach, and breathwork facilitator who talks about body image and trauma and the effects on how we see ourselves. So if you are in any way not feeling good enough about how you look in any form or fashion or how you see yourself, this episode is for you. We go many different places because I like to expand our way of thinking. If you want to grab the journal, it's free, 100% free. It will help you along your healing journey of trying to really work through how you see yourself in your body image. So grab it. It's at Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com/free resources. It'll be emailed to you, and then you can get also the weekly newsletter that comes out once a week, and it's packed full of helpful strategies, tips, helpful information on healing and growth. So you don't want to miss out on that. And then you can follow along on social media at Kristen D. Boyce on Instagram and Facebook, and then Kristen Boyce on TikTok, still learning that. It's a whole nother thing. And we know social media does play into how we see ourselves. So without further ado, here is my impactful conversation, deep and expansive, with Victoria Albina. Enjoy. Welcome back to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am thrilled to have a repeat guest. Victoria, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be back.
I'm so excited. Last time we talked all about codependency. It was a deep dive into codependency, which will probably tie in today to our conversation. But when we first got on, we were talking about kind of what to talk about. And the subject that came through to me that was so important that I'm hearing more and more about is not feeling confident with your body, whether it's your weight, your face. There's this movement in society about being young, looking young, face fillers. I mean, we could talk about all the things that we are being exposed to. And body image seems to be a theme that I'm seeing that we just, as women and men too, I don't want to throw men out with this too, because I see men also having body image issues.
Yeah, certainly.
Not feeling enough, like not liking what we see. Right. And that being something that can block us from feeling that spiritual divine leading or feeling the joy that we want in our life, feeling content and calm. So I thought it'd be important just to let's dive into this topic on body image and how it can be a block and a barrier to kind of feeling stuck in life. What are your thoughts on the subject?
First of all, I have like 12 million streams of thought. So I want to just start by acknowledging that there's so many influences, so many reasons, this is multifactorial. It's layered. It's complex. It's easy to be like, oh, it's just the patriarchy. It's just white settler colonialism. It's just late stage capitalism. It's just your mom. It's so many layers upon layers. So if you're a listener struggling with this, my love, you are not alone. There's a lot of reasons why. You're not defective. You're not broken. You're not effed up. There's nothing wrong with you. And I'm going to say this and then I'm going to back myself up. I'm going to explain what I mean. So hold tight before you're like, ew. If you're struggling with body issues, body image issues, it's not a problem. And what I mean by that is it is evidence that you are a mammal living in the systems you're living in. And when we make it, oh, this is a problem, I have to fix this, it's a problem, we turn it into something even greater than what it is, right? We create more sympathetic activation in our nervous system and we start fighting against it versus understanding it, befriending it, sitting with it, and then integrating whatever it is that we are lacking or want or need in life that leads us to treat ourselves, think about ourselves, interact with ourselves in these ways. Does that last point make sense, Kristen?
It makes sense. And I want to take a deeper dive into the root.
Yeah, we can unpack that for sure.
Let's start with the roots of developing body image, a way of looking at yourself and perceiving yourself that may not be the truth of really what's there. We identify with our body. The way we feel about ourselves often is linked into what we see in the mirror, what we see on the scale.
Right. And it's linked really to, so I'll use sort of a CBT, cognitive behavioral theory framework for this, right? Our thought, it's also Buddhism too, that it's not the number on the scale or the pounds or the dress size. It's the story we tell about it, right? It's the narrative that we're assigning to those values that means something or not. I do CrossFit now. So if I put on weight, I'm like, oh yeah, look who's getting more muscle, right? Whereas in my 20s and early 30s, if I gained weight, oh no, there's something wrong with me. There's something bad. Oh, there's a problem. So it really comes down to the story and the narrative. And the story and narrative is informed by the culture within which we live, the society within which we live, the religious context, the community context, our family of origin, our ethnic narrative, our origins, and the narratives there. And I think you and I were talking about this. It's so much about worth and value and how much value we're assigning to things outside of ourselves. Someone else's story about what makes a good body and a bad body, a lovable body. And in the US culture, historically, a fat body, which fat was a bad word when you and I were growing up, right? It was like an insult to call someone fat. I'm so glad that's been reclaimed with lots of love. All these fat activists on my team. One of the coaches who works for me, Molly Goodman, is a body love fat activist coach who coaches in my program. She's amazing. And I think it really does come down to what are the stories you tell about worth and size. It's deep.
Pretty embedded messages that keep getting reinforced. And then we don't think we're desirable. We don't think we're lovable and nobody would want us. I'm not desirable enough. I mean, this is what clients will say. This is what we hear, or be rejected, or I'm going to be discarded or replaced for the next new model, so to speak, or someone better than me.
And what's challenging here is that when we look at the social science research, that's not a wrong idea, meaning like people who are assigned fat are hired less, are discounted in interviews. There is actual fat phobia. There is actual stigma against people I don't even know what like the size limit is, like where that starts being a thing. You know what I mean? But folks who would fit the plus size category, there's actual stigma. Like it is actually real. So it's both about combating that on a social level, looking at the social determinants of health, the biological determinants of health, disarticulating the like being fat means you aren't healthy narrative, because I think that really keeps people spinning in a bunch of garbage. And then really doing the work to support ourselves and those we love, to recognize that all bodies really truly are amazing human bodies. And it's such a wild and unbelievable gift to be born a human. And that all bodies should be celebrated because they're humans, they're bodies, they're living sentient creatures who should be treated with love and care and kindness and not judged because of the numbers on a scale. That's so silly. It's what is.
It is. And deeper dive into this, when I work with clients, I've gone to doctors. And the doctors are blaming the client for, oh, you're going to die because you're way overweight or your health is in jeopardy. And well, okay, but the approach is not of empathy, of not of compassion, not of understanding, not of acceptance. It's the antithesis of that. And that impacts how someone feels about themselves, and it can leave these permanent, what feels like at the moment, permanent scars.
And I would posit that honestly, elevated cortisol and adrenaline and stress hormones from hating yourself and the size and shape of your body is much worse overarchingly for your health than being, I'm using air quotes here, folks, too fat or too thin. Your weight, I really think it's the stress and trauma is much worse for your health than anything associated with weight. And again, I'll also say this, BMI is garbage, right? We know that. We know that it's a racist system. It is based on one Eurocentric body type and doesn't take into account things, I don't know, being athletic. I am at 43, the healthiest and most athletic I've been in my whole life. And I'm a pretty athletic little animal. I'm part rabbit on my mother's side and half cartoon character on my dad's. So I've always worked out, but I can lift now, girl, right? It's super dope. And my weight keeps going up. My BMI keeps going up and up as my amount of fat, right? Lean muscle to fat ratio keeps going in the direction of muscle. And I'm just saying this to give a real life example of if I went to a primary care provider now, they'd probably lecture me about my weight, which is like just some garbage. So we have to start looking beyond these old stories we hear. Having been a primary care provider for a decade as a nurse practitioner, I never weighed anybody. If somebody wanted to get weighed, like, okay, whatever. I made sure to let folks know that it was the least important measurement we were taking in any given visit.
I've had clients say, I don't want to be weighed. And like, you have to be weighed. Nope. I don't want to be weighed.
No one can force you. So yeah, I think it's a really important, and I'm UCSF trained family nurse practitioner. You do not have to be weighed. Your provider wants you to be weighed because God forbid you have cancer and you drop 30 pounds and they didn't chart it, then your mom could sue them. They're trying to cover their butt. And I get that. They're trying to watch out for your health, meaning like if there is a huge swing, you do want someone to know about that. But like the average human who doesn't want to be weighed will notice if they gain 20 or 30 pounds in a month. So like you can decline to be weighed. And you might, if you get attitude about it, you can let them know that they're insisting that you have a medical procedure is against your rights.
Yeah, there you go. That brought up another point that I was thinking about. How much do you think medical trauma early on? So if you've had a difficult birth, or let's say you had something happen in childhood, you had to have a surgery and it was necessary for survival. Sure. How much of that do you think impacts body image? Because it's a trauma to the body.
Yeah. So this is one of the things I think people don't realize, because I'll get clients all the time who say, I had a really nice childhood. I don't understand how I'm walking around in what feels like a trauma response. And so exactly to your point, early childhood surgery, even IVs, trips to the ER, things that like, thank friggin' goodness you had access to that. Yay. And can be trauma that's written into the body and therefore becomes the neural map that the neural grooves in your mind run on, meaning it becomes the default programming in your mind and your body to say there's something wrong with this body. I don't trust this body in the world. And to create that sort of little bit of sympathetic activation around the body because it has been the site of trauma. That's a whole thing. And so when we're working to heal the autonomic nervous system and to do trauma healing work, one of the questions I always ask is about early childhood procedures. I mean, there's all sorts of layers right in there. We can also talk about toxins in utero. We can go down sort of quite a long pathway. But what I think is really important is to talk about how we heal this.
Exactly.
So you're so brilliant and amazing. And I know you do incredible work with your clients. What do you say to someone who comes to you with body dysmorphia or who comes to you with body issues and wants some help, wants to change?
We start with the trauma history. Really, we start with family of origin. We start with medical procedures. We start with unhealthy relationships, whether it's with a parent or with a partner of any sort, because I find that messages that if they've been commented, their body's been in their face, whether it's like, oh, your acne or your lips or you name it, whatever body part there is, there's then body shame. Then you have a distorted view of your own body, face, self. So we take a holistic look at, let's break this down, cultural views. I mean, you kind of named some of the pieces and parts that are so important. So we start with kind of a trauma history around body image, body associations, anything about how you see yourself. So those messages really get embedded into the narrative, into the stories we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I know it was for me. I'm Argentine and not to brag, but we are both the country with, last I checked, and if someone wants to fact check me on this, welcome, the country with the highest number of psychoanalysts and psychotherapists per capita.
Really? I didn't know that.
God. We're so self-absorbed. but we are just culture that we love psychology. We just love it. And like Freudian analysis in particular. I feel like that's been shifting in the last decade, but Argentines love real Freudian analysis. It's fascinating. We are also one of the countries with the most eating disorders per capita. And there are like some really complex sociopolitical and race-based, like we could go down that rabbit hole. But what's really interesting is just the obsession of the deep cult of thinness. It is wild. So I grew up with constant body shaming, constantly that, do you need to eat that? Need to? And I'm like, dude, I'm 6 and it's a cookie. So yes, I think yes is the only possible answer because I'm a children, right? And so it led to a pretty intense body dysmorphia of just not really understanding my body as a thing in time and space for so many reasons. The weight thing being a big part of it became so disconnected from, it felt so unsafe to be in my body because it was so constantly criticized and right, so constantly watched. I can like feel my mom looking me up and down to see if I was acceptable today. And that generally I was not, because I wasn't by American standards even like a chubby kid, but by her Argentine standards, it was a real problem. My body was a problem
to her and
by her standards
of what was acceptable and what wasn't.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's really only maybe in the last decade or so, as I've done all this work to number one, really reclaim presence. Number two, do somatic practices. And we can come back to what that means, but really regulate my nervous system and understand my nervous system. Those things together with parts work have really been the things that have helped me to understand my body and come back into my body and really inhabit my body and be present in my body, which has been just life-changing in every way. Because to your point, when you were talking earlier about living with intention, I now can hear my intuition, can hear my discernment. I know what my discernment feels like in my body because I'm in my body. Whereas before I made decisions from my brain, which as you talked about this before, that's a terrible place to make decisions from.
Well, we're cutting off parts of ourselves that are so key.
What are you doing?
A depth of information that help us navigate your intuition and your guide and your self.
I want to make decisions from my brain. No. I am a very smart smarty pants, and I am not interested in the decisions that my brain makes. Thank you very much. I want my gut to make it.
Yes. But the people aren't taught that. That's not what we're taught. We're conditioned out of our bodies because there's shame attached to the body.
Oh, sure.
So if I can just disconnect from the body, I can disconnect. And sometimes there's survival reasons, but disconnect from the shame, then I feel safer. I mean, rather EMDR is what I like to use in brain spotting. I know we've talked about and eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which does have somatic experiencing tied into it with the body. Yeah. We're then taking those negative stories that we've had about how we perceive ourselves and that narrative and that association with shame in the body. And now we're reprocessing that to release it, to free ourselves. It's not to say you'll never have another shame thought. You will. You can return to truth and reconnect with the self and truth that lies within. So there's so much to unpack here of what you...
Can I just pause?
Yes, jump in.
You have such a beautiful way of phrasing things. That just gave me full shivers the way you just explained that process. It was just gorgeous.
Thank you. When you're talking, there's this connection. There's this knowing. We're like souling together. We're like, okay, here we are. Yep. When you think of the somaticism in the body, because you said that's one way to kind of heal, to find reconnection with your truth and your intuition and your gut. How do people begin that? How do you help guide people? Because they might not see the correlation between the body, somaticism, which is kind of self-regulation, with how they perceive their body image, how they look at themselves in the mirror.
How does it link? Yeah. Okay. So let's start there. How does it link? And then how do we get started? So how it links is simply this. If you are not present in your body, and so of course you're in your brain, repeating other people's narratives about what is and isn't okay about your body.
That's so good. You're repeating the narratives about what someone else has said or you've heard or you bought into, rather than being in your body, which is where the truth lies. Is that what you're saying?
Your body will tell you if you're at the right weight for you. If you need to gain some weight or lose some weight, gain some muscle, I'm not going to say lose some muscle, but you know what I mean? Not train so hard. Let's say that, because that's a whole thing too.
That's a whole episode.
Female athlete triad, that is a whole other issue, right? Your body will tell you, yeah, gluten's fine for me. Or actually,
no pun intended, but
all puns always intended.
But it's true, right?
Excellent. Not a good choice. But when we disconnected from our bodies, all we know again is, okay, so I read this Instagram post that said gluten is terrible and no one should eat it, or dairy is terrible and no one should eat it. My partner is Swedish, like for real Swedish. And she was like, I think I'm not supposed to eat dairy because I don't know, it's bad. And I was like, girl, you're the only person on the planet who has the genome to eat dairy. Eat some dairy. And she feels so much better when she does. Grass-fed organic, meow, 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 meow. But she was, and I, 30 years, was going on someone else's story about what's right for me, what's best for me, what's good for me, how I should move, how I should feel about my body, the stories I should tell about my body. And now, because I'm actually present in this animal, I know what feels good and what doesn't. And so when I say I'm not having dessert tonight, it's not because there's something wrong with me if I put on weight and sugar is like bad across the board, decline myself pleasure, because that's what being a worthy and good woman is. Because let's bring that narrative in too, right? Good women don't have pleasure. They don't have the cookie. They don't have the brownie. They don't have the ice cream. Or if they do, they feel they're guilty about it. Or like, oh, I get to have it because I earned it because I did extra Peloton. Or there's all these narratives about depriving ourselves joy, pleasure, excitement. When I now say I'm skipping the ice cream, it's because I'm listening to my body. And my body's like, that's going to make you kind of hyper and crazy. Because remember, I'm half cartoon character. And you're going to be really unfocused tomorrow because you get like sugar hangovers. So don't eat it, but have more steak. You know what I'm saying?
You're honoring what you know about yourself. It's a self-awareness about what you know and how you feel.
Intentionality.
And paying attention and being curious. Because I'll have some clients say, I'm not going to eat the ice cream, so I'll eat the whole gallon and then I'll eat another and then I'll eat another.
Well, so, I'm no longer available for substances to dysregulate me.
No longer available for substances to dysregulate you. And tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's a phrase that came to me probably like a year ago. One of my mentors looked at me and was like, you're not allowed caffeine. And he was joking, but he was like, I've been watching you and the way you are is one of my meditation teachers. I facilitate these groups in Brooklyn. And he was, when you are hours away from caffeine, you're so calm, you're so grounded, you're so centered. And then you have that drink and all of a sudden your energy gets scattered and like pew, pew, little spider legs. And I started watching myself. I started being my watcher. But even this, right? I started watching myself after caffeine. That was not possible when I wasn't doing somatic practices and I wasn't in body. It's now possible. What a gift. So I watched myself after caffeine. I can feel the sympathetic activation. I can feel the adrenaline going up. I feel it behind my eyes. And then my jaw gets kind of like a little gritty. I would see people come into the ER on like amphetamines, right? Back in my NP days. And it was dysregulating me and I would get irritable and then I would get sad. Caffeine makes me sad. Who knew? It took a while. I got to tell you, I fought it, but I liked being jacked up. I liked being racy because it was a comfortable feeling because I'd known it my whole life. And so where I'm going is this, whether it's caffeine or sugar or gluten or whatever the chemical is that takes you out of yourself and out of intentionality and hijacks your emotions and hijacks your mood, whether it's someone else's narrative that hijacks your mood, because we can extend it out to there, you get to decide what you're available to be dysregulated by.
Powerful for people to really connect with that.
For sure. And let's put the caveat before we both get hate mail. I am a trauma survivor. I have been triggered. I'm not talking about that, my angels. I'm not saying you 100% of the time can choose when you get regulated and dysreg. Come on now. What I'm saying is within this context that we're talking about body image, what are you putting in your body? How do you feel about your body? The narrative around your body? What choices are you making? And how are they keeping you connected with self and not?
I'm okay with it. What I love about these conversations is you don't have to agree with everything. I like expansion. I like thinking about things in different ways that I haven't thought about it before. And one of the things with body image is how much are we in our ego? We really think about this. How much are we in our ego and how much are we in our spirit self? I know this is taking it another level in a different way to think about it.
I mean, so there's the healthy ego, which is the ways we identify, like my healthy ego knows that I am loving and I am kind and I am generous and I'm such a good friend and I'm such a good partner and I'm very smart. My healthy ego is dope and keeps me from dissociating and becoming psychotic. And then the unhealthy ego of me, like, cares what other people think about, right? So,
yes.
When that less healthy, do I want to call it unhealthy? Maybe it's just survival ego.
Yeah.
Did we just coin a new phrase?
I think we did. I think
oh my
you
God,
did.
we're so
you
smart.
Did. You coined it. Survival ego. Okay, let's take that concept. Survival ego.
Yeah. Oh, I really like somebody write that down. Somebody write that down.
See how this happens when we're talking about we're letting ourselves go to new places.
And when we're letting ourselves be vulnerable and be real and just workshop it. You hold loving space for me. I hold loving space for you. Both of our audiences love us. And like, let's just work it. I'm so happy. Survival ego. That ego that learned the crappy things we learned as kids that were brilliant then. It's like the adaptive ego too, right?
It was adaptive at one point.
Sure. And is maladaptive now.
Yes. And it keeps us in the wounded, less than, not enough, not equipped, lost, seeking outside validation, seeking outside affirmation, seeking outside people to tell us that we're lovable and we're enough, you're beautiful and you're thin.
And probably keeps us from receiving that validation and affirmation and love and care when it comes our way.
Because we don't believe it. See, people will be like,
how could we?
You look so beautiful. And someone could go, you're just saying that to be nice.
Yeah.
You're just saying that to get something from me. You're just saying, like, we think there's a manipulative, and there could be, I'm not saying there's not.
Sure.
It's hard for us to believe. If I don't believe that in my spirit self, I'm not going to believe. I'm not going to let that land potentially, or I'm going to second guess it. Because the survival ego says, danger, this is manipulation, this is.
So then the answer is to come back into presence with self and to come into your watcher. It's the same answer. It always comes back to intentionality, intuition, discernment. Because when you are fully landed and present in self, you can feel when it's that cloying, like, oh my God, you look so great. Listen, can I borrow? And you're just like, really? You greased me up like that? But you can see through it.
Because your intuition and your gut discerns, it's a knowingness. That's what I call it, a knowingness within.
Right. And you can trust it when you're embodied.
Trust it when embodied.
Because I remember so many times in my younger days, hearing the message, feeling the message from my intuition and clocking it, but discounting it or operating from my conditioning. So I was in an abusive marriage and I broke up with my ex through dating for like a month. I just was like, or less, a couple of weeks. I was like, oh no, this isn't right. My intuition was like, no, this isn't right. And they started sobbing and laid this whole manipulative story on me. And I just, from my like good girl training, my good Catholic girl training growing up, your girl's name is Maria Victoria over here, from all my people pleasing training, all my growing up in a codependent household, I just was, okay, sure, then okay, I'll date you. Every bone in my body was like, no, run. I just was like, okay. Because I didn't trust me. I wasn't embodied in me. Right. For all these really great reasons. I'd grown up hearing that my body was a problem. I was too loud. I was too much. I was too much of a smarty pants. I was a problem. So like, of course I didn't trust me. And so I didn't trust my intuition when it screamed at me and I acted on it, but then got pushback. I was like, I guess I must be wrong. I guess this must be the thing I should do. And so I just want to really name that part of that survival ego is the survival skills that led us to survive. I don't think there's anything wrong with me that I disavowed my own wisdom. I was doing exactly what I was trained to do. And it wasn't until, like you're talking about, that embodiment leads to that spiritual expansion and growth that allows us to be basta, no more. I won't put up with being treated like anything other than the absolute goddess I am. And then as part of that, I am no longer available to treat my body poorly.
Well, because it's your navigational system. You need it.
Okay, wait. You and I dropping little bombs in the other going, oh my God, say it again. When you come to be navigated by your body and you truly trust it as your GPS, why would you treat it poorly? It's your lifeline, but like in a different way than just the machine I live in.
Yes.
Oh, that's so good.
I think what we've done is we've not appreciated the value in the body's gift it gives us to literally have the joy and freedom that we want because we associate it with how it looks.
Right. And not right versus, oh, my body is so brilliant because it knows what's right and wrong for me. It knows when to turn left. It knows when someone's a good fit. It knows it's like, oh, what size skirt do you wear?
And the thoughts are consumed in then that rather than the embodiment of breath and noticing the breath, noticing where there's tightness, noticing if someone says something and your gut gets a little flippy.
You leave felt experience and you're just, okay, so that's the other thing, right? So in order for systems like the patriarchy, late stage capitalism, white settler colonialism to continue, we cannot be embodied. Because when we are fully embodied, we are out of the neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning part of the brain, and we are in the soma, in the body where deep wisdom lies. And we can see right through these BS systems. And we know they're garbage. We know they're just keeping us in servitude to them and not to our higher calling. It takes us out of one love and creates separation, which is always a false narrative. And that's what this whole thing about some bodies is good, some bodies is bad. That's also another form of creating separation to keep us out of unity.
There is so much separation. And when we look at body image and we say, someone goes, okay, this is great. This is a great conversation, but really, how do I feel it? What's mindfulness? I mean,
where are your feet? Where are my feet? All day. What does it feel like to be my feet? And I start there because I have found over the 20 years of doing this that it's rare that people are triggered by their feet.
And I think the feet is the grounding. What you're talking about is it's centering, it's coming back to the present moment when you are in your feet.
Exactly.
About what do I look like? And I'm not thin enough and I'm not pretty enough and I'm all the things. I am now in my feet. I'm coming back into my body.
Grounded in my body, grounded in time and space. Opens up the potential for a connection with nature, Pachamama, whatever you want to call it, Gaia, Earth Mother, or just dirt. If you're like, no, I'm very science, then gravity is really dope. How about you contemplate that for a hot minute? And it takes us out of our spin. That's one of the main purposes of meditation, but also just simple mindfulness, is it takes us out of our habitual spinning and gives us somewhere to land. Because when the brain is ruminating, it really is that the prefrontal cortex has gone offline. And so we can use a tool like, where are my feet? Because it gives the prefrontal a job. You don't want a prefrontal cortex that's unemployed. That thing is stirring up trouble left and right. It really wants your attention. And then the somatic or body-based portion of the question, where are my feet, brings us back into the body. You can feel your weight in different ways. You can feel your lightness. You can feel different pressure. It's so simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. For a lot of people, it will be very challenging to come into presence in your own feet. I want to honor that. That's real.
So you might want to put a Post-it note saying, come into your feet.
Where are your feet? There's an app called Mind Jogger that I like. That's free. Last I checked. Don't come at me if it's now 99 cents. Like, you set the intervals. I have mine set to random. So it just randomly drops questions on my home screen on my phone. Looking to see if it dropped anything in the last hour. Not yet, but could just have it set reminders. Where are my feet? And then I love to link these moments of mindfulness to things I'm doing anyway. So do you pee? Are you a human who pees? If you are, every time you pee, breathe. Do a little bathroom meditation. I love a bathroom meditation, a pee-pee meditation. Oh, I'm peeing. I'm going to breathe in, long, slow out, and feel into my body. Just get present. If your body is the site of trauma, going present in the body can be very, very challenging and not always the safest or best idea. And so you can orient the nervous system. So we orient the nervous system by looking around wherever we are. And I have a recording. I'll share information about how you can get that recording in a minute, but just look around your environment and ground the nervous system in the here and now. So when you look in the mirror and you think, oh my God, look at Miss Belly, that's not actually a here and now thought. That's someone else, some other industry, some magazine, right? That is a thought that was put into your head at some point in your life by someone or something in the past. You are not in the present, truly present with your amazing human body. You know, the one who has a spleen, you have a greater momentum. You have mitochondria. You are amazing and miraculous. And when we're in that critic voice, that's the past. So we come back to the present, back to this present moment. And in this present moment, there is nothing but acceptance and love when you're truly here, when you're really in the now. And so orienting to the environment reminds the autonomic nervous system of the when and where you are, because the autonomic nervous system forgets. It's not that it forgets. It actively takes you out of remembering because that's part of its job. So it's not like it forgets. It's just is like, well, I want to keep you safe. I want you to survive. And that may be easier if you're not right here, right now. That's its job, but you don't have to just like let it do it with no guidance. You get to step in and give some direction there.
You know what came to me while you were talking as I was thinking about the survival ego and that critical mind. And is that it? Is that the survival ego in our mind?
Oh.
I kind of feel like that is. As you were sharing, I was like, you know what? I think the survival ego thinks it's trying to help us when we look in the mirror.
100%.
Right? It's trying to help us go, well, if you lose the weight, if you just got a facelift, if you just got more Botox,
they won't criticize you.
They won't criticize you. You'll be more lovable. People will think you're beautiful and you are amazing and you are desirable.
Absolutely.
It's the survival ego trying to belong and gain acceptance.
And significance and belonging.
Friend the survival ego and thank the survival ego and say, oh, honey, I know you're just trying to get love and belonging and you're enough. I know it sounds simple in how I'm saying it, but I'm wondering if we could befriend that survival ego with love and understanding of what do you think you're trying, what are you needing? Because you think if my body looks a certain way, what am I trying to get? What need am I trying to get filled? And it's lovability, acceptance, belonging, these things that we're all longing for. And if we can, say, you know what, honey, you're now going to reparent that survival ego the way we wanted it done for us by saying, honey, you are lovable just the way you are. Your survivable ego might not believe that at the beginning. So I'm wondering, I feel like that's part of this journey with
befriending is always the place to go though, right? It is always the place to start with any emotion, every emotion, because every emotion that arises is just the latest presentation of deep self-love. You're like, wait, hold on. I was super angry at the supermarket because that guy was such a jerk. And that's self-love. Yes. Your body, your mind, your ego is just trying to protect you, care for you, make you feel somewhat safer in the moment by sending you into anger, rage, frustration, disappointment, anger, happiness, all of that.
Disgust with yourself.
Disgust, revulsion, repulsion.
People like disgust when they look at themselves.
If I had continued to believe that my cultural stories, which became my familial stories about what like a good and worthy woman and a good and worthy body are, I would still hate myself and I would hate my body. And that wouldn't be because I'm an idiot or because I'm dumb or because you know what I mean?
Yes.
It would really be from that survival ego saying like, hey, these people, their love matters more than your own. And you're not going to get care unless you're slender. In their way, in their mind.
Or you're desperate for the love. You're desperate to feel that belonging and that acceptability and the desirability. Lots of people want to be desired. That makes them feel loved.
Of course. And then there's a biological, we all love some oxytocin and some endorphins and like that makes science, right? Procreation of the species. Come on, it makes sense. And to your point, that makes you feel loved, I think makes you feel safe or leads you to tell the story that you're safer and then takes you out of self-love.
Because you're going to need the next dose. It's like, I'm going to need the next, that only lasts
hit me
so
again.
Long. Another dose of it would be a repetitive cycle because it's not coming from within. And that healing of the body image that we so struggle with is literally, you're saying the answer comes from within.
Yeah. And we do need to make societal change. And I think that's happening. I think we're seeing more diversity across race and gender and ability and weight and size in advertising, in like what size is available at Target. We're starting to see that. We're starting to see, I just can't stop thinking about Lizzo, but just like generally speaking, she's always top of mind. But the fact that she like has a show that's all about plus size dancers who are amazing and do cardiovascular workouts for like 8 hours a day with her. You see what I'm saying? Like we do need to heal this on a societal level and within our own hearts. It's a both and.
Agreed. Because social media, especially for young folks, we're seeing it really in teens. There is such a disparity in how they see themselves. I mean, when we talk about body dysmorphia, it's not seeing yourself the way you actually are.
Right.
It's like a distorted view of yourself. And we're seeing comparing themselves
filters.
With the filters.
I think it's the filters. Yeah.
All these unrealistic images aren't attainable. Really?
Right. And the AI images too now. I mean, it's pretty wild. I think, again, right, it comes back to rebuilding and remembering that discernment within, that connection with truth that lives within us when we're present in our bodies. Because then you know the filters aren't real. You know it doesn't really matter. And you get to decide what matters for you. I like wearing makeup. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I do it from, oh, this is fun, and not from like, right, there's something wrong with me if I don't have makeup on. And I think that's important too, is to remember that skill of discernment where we can, I don't think it's anti-feminist to wear heels or a push-up bra or makeup or to put on a look. I think that can be an incredibly empowering feminist act. It's really all about agency, and agency comes from discernment and connection with self.
Period. So this has been such a great conversation. Where can people find your meditation? You had mentioned the meditation.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to either link it or send folks to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so if you head on over to victoriaalbina.com/close the chapter, there's a very special treat just for you, which is so exciting. So you can download a suite of meditations, nervous system orienting exercises to help your nervous system come back to the here and now. And my inner child meditation. It's really just a delight. It's free, so you can't go wrong. The price is right. And it's right there, victoriaalbina.com/close the chapter, just for your listeners, which is so much fun. You can also follow me on the gram at Victoria Albina Wellness. I give good gram. And my podcast is called Feminist Wellness, and it's for humans of all genders. And I'd love to have you check it out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your heart, your energy, your wisdom. I think to
likewise
close this chapter out and to summarize what the takeaways from me, because I want to just kind of really, this is a deep subject.
Yeah, it's big.
It's big. And I think we've kind of broken down the roots of body image issues, where to begin, and some immediate steps you can take to really center into the here and now and come back into your body. And we've identified this term and coined a term, you coined a term, survival ego is an important concept in identifying within yourself in order to begin to heal, feeling better about yourself. So there's so many more points, but I think that kind of summarizes our conversation today.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for being with me again. Until next time.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see ya. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week, and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.